All right. All right, Midwest Conference football fans, welcome back. I'm here today with Ripon College's head coach Jake Marshall. How you doing today, coach?
Good, Cameron, man. How are you?
Pretty good today, pretty good. So coach, I just want to get right into it with you. Talking about last season, what were some of the biggest lessons you guys learned from last season? And how do you guys plan to apply them for this year?
Yeah, great question. For us, we were a really young team, playing a lot of freshmen, sophomores, even a lot of our juniors were, first time guys really in the lineup. We had a really big, talented senior class in 22, so we knew we'd be a little inexperienced coming back into last year. And for us, it was the biggest thing we learned was just maturing, right? How to handle weekly prep. What does that look like? How to handle those game day situations, right? We struggle with that at times, just keeping our composure and getting through some of those natural football things that happen, right? It's an emotional game. And I think for us coming out, that's been our focus throughout the off season is what's our response look like when something negative happens or we feel like somebody took a shot at us or whatever that might be. And so I think for us that's the biggest thing coming out of the season and through the off season is just maturing a little bit, getting a little bit older, getting more reps under our belt and being ready to handle some adversity.
Definitely. In terms of like a philosophy for you, coach, how do you adapt your coaching philosophy to align with the strengths and weaknesses of your roster each season?
Yeah, I think it's an integral part of being a coach, regardless of role or sport, right? Our last year, for me personally, like I'm a pretty kind of laid back coach, I'd say, right? That approach probably didn't work early for us last year, right? We probably needed to take some of those things. Not I don't want to say more seriously, right? But we were a little. For me, probably right, especially as a first year head coach, probably wasn't prepared to handle a young team like that, at least right away, right? So learn some lessons about, just trying to be a little more accountable in our actions and making sure we're paying attention to every little detail. I think in like 2022, when we had all those seniors, right, that was kind of the approach I tried to take again last year with, a little bit more lax. Not necessarily in our preparation or how we handle it, right? But just our daily interactions, right? If we made a mistake with those seniors, they got it corrected really quick. We didn't need to harp on it a whole lot. Whereas last year, we needed to be a little more aggressive with how we handled some of those mistakes and getting things corrected. So I think each year is a challenge to figure out the DNA of your team, right? You could have a lot of the same guys, but everybody interacts differently. When you throw in the freshmen, you lose a couple pieces, maybe a transfer or two, and all of a sudden your team makeup looks a lot different. And so it's about figuring out who how you can coach guys, how do they respond, whether it's being a hard coach, being a fun coach, being the hype guy, right? You got to figure out what fits your team, and work through that. And there's probably always a little bit of a challenge as you get into camp, just as your team's coming together, and trying to figure out what that looks like moving forward.
Definitely. For in terms of the player leadership on the team, how do you envision player leadership evolving this season based on last year's experiences?
Yeah, I think that's at any level. I think your leadership that comes from your players, your veterans, especially, is going to be the key to having a lot of success. We fortunately, we've got a guy who's been a two-time captain for us, coming back for his sixth year, with his between COVID and grad school and medical redshirt, all that stuff. And he was captain for us last year. Be looking forward to him continuing. But our challenge through the spring and the off season was we gotta step up, and we gotta have some guys take some of those leadership roles. I think a pretty large portion of our returning production on either side of the ball was or guys who are very they're great leaders, but they're not vocal leaders. And so trying to create some of that, and vocal to us isn't always yelling and screaming and hyping it up. It's about being positive and using your words in the right way. And so that's been our challenge. I think we've got some guys who've stepped up into those roles, and even some younger guys. We've got some sophomores who have are going to be sophomores, excuse me, right? Who really stepped up this spring and try to take on some of those vocal roles. And so we're hoping that the strides we made through the spring can carry over. And again, when things get tough, like we talked about for last year, coaches can talk and come up with ideas all they want, but it comes down to the leadership and when they can get everybody else on board and moving in the same direction. So hopefully we're able to take some of those lessons we learned in the spring and apply them to the season.
Definitely. And you talked about the offseason a little bit. I wanted to ask, what steps were you guys taking during the offseason to build that momentum and team cohesion for a new season?
Yeah, we had the normal stuff, right? You're in the weight room, you're doing spring ball stuff. But we tried to do some team bonding activities. Just anything we could do to try to get the team to come together, right? Kind of various activities, but just finding ways to spend time together because I think we all we all grow in those bonds in the weight room, in the locker room, and whatever, but it's that time outside of football where I think teams really come together, whether it's it's a beach day, it's a game, it's playing games, whatever that looks like. That's when teams kind of develop, I think, a lot of that trust and those bonds, and just being around each other, seeing the work that everybody puts in and pushing each other. That to me is where a lot of that stuff comes from.
Definitely. And in terms of like player development for you guys, coach, what is your approach to developing players, but not just as athletes, but as individuals?
Yeah, for us here, we always, when we talk in the recruiting process, right, we want to make sure everybody understands that it's not a, hey, come into camp as a freshman and try to win a job and then it's you either win it or it's over, right? This is a 4-year development process for us. So we've got an excellent strength conditioning coach, Brandon Zemke, who's a full-time strength coach for the department. He does a great job tracking, working with our guys throughout their entire time, staying in touch with them. He's really engaged. And so takes a lot off my plate, right, in terms of the strength development. But on the mental side, right, for us, it's about learning how to handle, again, those situations that life and football are going to throw at us. And so it's about finding things that our guys can relate to, right? Whether it's verbal cues, right? For us, we have the red standard, which stands for relentless effort and discipline. That's one of our cues for our guys, right? That no matter what, we got to make sure we're sticking true to these ideals. And so kind of talking about that stuff a lot. And we did a couple kind of leadership team workshops throughout the off season, and just finding things like that our guys can rally around. Because I think everybody responds to different points, right? There's some things that, right, you might find really motivating and inspiring, and the guy next to you doesn't feel quite the same. And so finding a couple things that everybody can really get on the same page with, and just trying to get to that point where when our guys leave here, you talk about physically, but mentally and those kind of things, like, want our guys to be prepared to handle any situation because life's going to get a lot harder when you get out of college, right? And so being ready and having some experience with handling some of those tough situations.
Definitely. My last question for you today, coach, is what has been some of your most memorable and favorite moments coaching this team so far?
Ooh, that's a tough one, but
Oh, long stand.
I think at least for us, if you're looking at my first year, right? Like, hey, what was the best part of the year? We had some exciting stuff. Like we opened up a brand new on-campus stadium. Beat Lake Forest at the grand opening. That was that was a pretty memorable day. I think for everybody for a lot of reasons, right? As a student athlete here, I remember talking about, wow, it'd be really cool to have a stadium right there, and to be a first year head coach when you open that stadium up was a pretty cool experience in itself. but I, if you're looking at, hey, there's one big memory. It's probably getting a win on the grand opening there. Especially against a great team like Lake Forest. Credit to Coach Cat. They're a heck of a team. So being able to come out with a win that day was pretty special.
That's amazing, Coach. Awesome. Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate everything.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this, and best of luck this year as you guys get going.
Sir, thank you so much. Good luck to you
All right. Have a good day.
as well.